Welcome to this explainer. Today we're stepping into an absolutely incredible story of profound resilience, unwavering faith, and sheer intellectual brilliance. We're going to be looking at the life of a man who shaped the beliefs of millions, literally surviving the fires of imperial persecution to defend his traditions.
Just think about this for a second. He memorized 1 million prophetic narrations. 1 million. And he stood entirely alone against the might of 3 separate caliphs. This is the story of the man who saved Islamic orthodoxy through a literal trial of fire and chains.
So, to really understand the man, we've got to go back to his beginnings. Born in Baghdad in 780 CE, right into the absolute peak of the Islamic Golden Age, Ahmad ibn Hanbal actually grew up as an orphan. Now, while Baghdad at this time was the incredibly wealthy center of the world's knowledge, Ahmad chose a very different path for himself. He embraced a life of mild asceticism. By 794, at just 14 years old, he started working as a scribe. And then, by 799, he left all the comforts of his city behind, traveling across the vast deserts of Arabia, from Kufa to Mecca to Yemen, entirely dedicated to seeking knowledge.
And his rigorous scholarly journey was built on such an incredibly solid foundation. He didn't just study casually, He completely immersed himself in the methodology of the Hadith scholars, learning under the absolute giants of his era. He studied jurisprudence under Abu Yusuf, the famous Hanafi judge, and later formed a deeply close bond with none other than Imam al-Shafi'i.
Now, 17, that is a number that really blew my mind when looking into this. Despite living in the shadow of the incredibly rich Abbasid Empire, Ahmad survived on a tiny inheritance from his father that yielded just 17 dirhams a month. He worked as a baker and a scribe to support his family, absolutely refusing state funding just to keep his integrity completely uncompromised.
In all that dedication, it didn't go unnoticed. His own teacher, Imam al-Shafi'i, famously stated, "I left Baghdad and didn't leave behind a man more virtuous, more learned, or more knowledgeable than Ahmad ibn Hanbal." That is incredible third-party validation from one of history's greatest legal minds. It really shows the immense scholarly weight Ahmad carried.
But what did he do with all that knowledge? Well, it built a monumental legacy. 30,000. That is the number of narrations meticulously compiled in his massive encyclopedia, Al-Musnad. Armed with that miraculous memory of over 1 million traditions, he systematized Islamic law by filtering it all down to these 30,000 pristine hadiths. It was an unprecedented feat in history.
So why does this matter? Basically, his literalist Athari approach meant there was way less room for pure speculation or guesswork. He heavily favored specific, documented instructions over general practice, insisting on a strict adherence to the Sunnah, which is the lived example of the Prophet. This secured a very clear, uncompromising framework for believers to follow. But here's where things get really intense. This strict adherence to tradition put him on a direct collision course with the most powerful men on earth. This sparked the massive ideological clash of the Mihna, or the Inquisition, which was initiated by the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun. The Caliph attempted to force scholars to adopt a state-imposed doctrine that the Quran was created. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, however, firmly held the orthodox position that the Quran is the eternal, uncreated Word of God. And because he flat-out refused to agree with the state's newly imposed doctrine, he faced a supreme ordeal. While a lot of other scholars understandably folded under that immense pressure and the literal threat of the sword, Ahmad did not. He was arrested, bound, and dragged before the Abbasid rulers in heavy iron chains. He was thrown into the empire's prisons, languishing in dark cells for years. Just think about the sheer physical courage required here. We're talking about an older man, a scholar, not a soldier. He could have ended his suffering instantly with just a single word of concession to the caliph, but he refused to alter a single word of his orthodox faith.
The persecution actually escalated severely under the next ruler, Caliph al-Mu'tasim. The historical records detailed the sheer brutality he faced. Ahmad was publicly flogged to the point of unconsciousness. The empire proved they could break his physical body, but they absolutely could not break his mind or his resolve.
Even when subsequent rulers tried a different tactic, placing him under strict house arrest and total isolation, forbidding him from teaching or even meeting with the public, he just didn't waver. His silent, steadfast resilience from inside his home ended up resonating far louder across the Islamic world than any of the imperial decrees being issued from the palaces.
And then, finally, the tide turns. With the ascension of Caliph al-Mutawakkil, the Inquisition was brought to an end. The champion of orthodoxy emerged from the darkness. Ahmad was released, vindicated and triumphantly reinstated as the undeniable leader of the Sunnah.
His unwavering stand during the Inquisition didn't just save his own personal integrity, it permanently protected the Athari creed for all future generations. Because of his incredible defense of the Sunnah, he became universally known as the proof of the religion.
And that steadfastness built an enduring global legacy. You might actually wonder, how did his school even survive the later destruction of Baghdad by the Mongols in 1258? Well, it outlived the very empires that tried to destroy it. His teachings were carried by loyal scholars like the Qudama family, who fled to Damascus and established the Salahiyya district. From there, the Hanbali Madhhab flourished in Egypt and eventually reached Najd, spreading his uncompromising methodology across the entire globe.
Which brings us to the end of his earthly life in the year 855 CE, and this incredibly staggering statistic, 800,000.
To break down the sheer unprecedented scale of his farewell, historical accounts estimate that his funeral was attended by 800,000 men and 60,000 women. The texts even report that 20,000 people actually converted to Islam that very day. What you should really take away from this is profound. While the state and the powerful opposed him for years, the people truly loved and revered him.
So we're left with this really powerful question. How did a solitary scholar, bound in chains, manage to outlast an empire? It is a true testament to the fact that conviction, when it's rooted in unwavering faith and immense knowledge, holds a kind of power that no worldly authority can ever defeat. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on the incredible, enduring legacy of the Unshakable Imam.